Lu Ruyan and I had been in love for 4 years, until I saw photos of her in a rich air at a hotel on her best friend's phone. I spent every last cent of my savings to hire a hacker, projecting her filthy videos onto the big screen at our graduation ceremony. As the entire school witnessed her disgrace, I smiled and walked toward her terrified mother. "Auntie, Rian owes me a debt. You can pay it back." Later, I personally snapped the rich heir's fingers one by one, listening to his screams like they were celestial music. While Lu Rian knelt in the pouring rain begging for mercy, I held her mother's exquisite waist and sneered, "Your mother tastes a hell of a lot better than you do." The light from the phone screen was a ghastly white, reflecting onto my face, which probably looked little better than a corpse. I, Chu Zhao, was slumped in a rickety dorm chair that was on the verge of falling apart. Sitting opposite me was Lu Rian's diehard best friend, Li Wei. The way this chick usually looked at me always held something indescribable, like pity, but also like she was waiting for a show to start. She sat with her legs crossed, fingernails painted blood red, idly scratching her rhinestone-encrusted phone case. "Here." She pushed the phone toward me. The screen was lit up, showing a few photos. Her voice was low, reeking of cheap perfume mixed with schadenfreude. "Zhaoji, look for yourself. I really couldn't stand it anymore. Ruyan is just too much of a piece of shit." It was just the two of us in the dorm. The broken fluorescent tube overhead sizzled and buzzed, sounding like a death knell. My fingers were stiff and cold, hovering over the screen, unable to tap down for a long time. For years, I had been with Lu Ruyan for 4 whole years. From a moment she nearly crashed into my chest holding a stack of books at the start of freshman year, to when her mother got sick and she was the only one in her family. I fucking skipped classes to work odd jobs, scraped and saved to pay her medical bills, and worked until my eyes were bloodshot. Those images rushed through my brain, making my temples throb violently. Lu Rian's face was as pure as a white lily, her eyes always dewy. When she looked at me, she could melt a person's heart. She had said, "Chu Zhao, after we graduate, let's build a good life together." She had said, "My mom says you're a reliable man." Bullshit. It was all fucking bullshit. My fingertip finally landed and swiped. The first photo showed Lu Ruyan and a man. The background was a high-end restaurant. The crystal chandeliers were dazzling enough to make one dizzy. The man's profile faced the camera. He was dressed in designer brands, his hair slicked back so hard a fly would slip right off. Lu Ruyan sat opposite him, wearing a black spaghetti-strap dress I had never seen her wear before, exposing a large expanse of snowy white shoulder and collarbone. She tilted her head slightly, smiling sweetly, her eyes looking like they were filled with stars. One of her hands rested lightly on the man's wrist on the table. That smile, that look, it was too fucking familiar. She used to only smile at me like that. The second photo was in a KTV private room, the lighting dim and ambiguous. Lu Ruyan was practically pressed into the man's embrace. He had his arm around her waist, his face buried in the crook of her neck. Lu Ruyan's face was upturned, eyes closed, her expression lost in pleasure, one hand gripping the man's hair. Fuck! A surge of metallic sweetness rushed up my throat. I clenched my back teeth hard to keep from spitting blood right there. My stomach churned like someone had stuffed me into a washing machine on a high-speed spin cycle. The third photo. It smashed my last shred of hope into smithereens. A hotel room. The lighting was that suggestive, dim yellow. Lu Ruyan was wrapped only in a white bath towel, her hair wet and draped loose, her cheeks flushed red. The man was wearing only trousers, shirtless, his back to the camera. One hand was reaching for the edge of Lu Ruyan's towel, about to pull it away. Lu Ruyan didn't dodge. She even lifted her chin slightly, looking at him with hazy eyes, a faint smile playing on the corners of her mouth. The timestamp in the bottom right corner of the photo was crystal clear. Last Friday, 11:23 p.m. Last Friday, past 10 p.m., she had sent me a voice message on WeChat, her voice soft and nasal, acting spoiled. "Zhao Zhao, I'm so dizzy. Maybe reviewing was too tiring. I'm gonna sleep now. You rest early too. Love you, ma." I had been so fucking worried, telling her to cover up well and not catch a cold. Who is this guy? I heard my own voice, dry as sandpaper rubbing together, every word exuding a chill. Li Wei leaned in closer, the smell of her perfume even more pungent. A famous, rich, second-generation heir in our school, Chun Wei from the finance department. His family is in real estate. He's the one who drives the sports car to class, super flashy. Heard he's been chasing Ruyan for a while, throwing money at her like crazy. She curled her lip. Ruyan too. She usually acts so high and mighty, but it turns out I didn't hear the rest. My ears were buzzing, filled only with the sound of my own heavy panting and the roar of blood rushing to my head. For years of a relationship, over 1,400 days and nights, I poured my heart and soul into it like a complete idiot, guarding her like the apple of my eye, and waiting on her perpetually sickly, aloof mother as if she were my own flesh and blood. And the result? This is what I get in return? Her wrapped in a bath towel, smiling that cheap, slutty smile at another man? Why show me this? I looked up, my eyes fixed dead on Li Wei. Anger was like a red-hot branding iron, scorching my insides until my organs spasmed. Yet strangely, my mind grew clearer, colder. Li Wei flinched under my gaze, then straightened her back, wearing a mask of self-righteousness that screamed, "I'm doing this for your own good. Chu Zhao, we're friends, right? I just couldn't bear to see you kept in the dark like a fool. Ruyan doesn't deserve you. Someone like Chun Wei is just playing around. Once graduation hits, Ruyan will be left crying with nowhere to go." She paused, then lowered her voice. "Besides, that bastard Chun Wei talks trash. When he was bragging to people, he insulted you too. Said you're a simp, a toad lusting after swan meat, and that you deserve to get cucked." A simp? A toad? I tugged at the corners of my mouth, wanting to laugh, but only managed a raspy, gasping sound. Lu Rian's intoxicated smile and Chun Wei's blurry profile flashed madly before my eyes. It felt like a chunk of my heart had been forcibly gouged out, leaving a massive, hollow void filled with biting cold wind. But immediately after, something darker, more viscous, like boiling asphalt, surged crazily from that void, instantly filling it and spilling over. Did it hurt? Of course it hurt. It hurt so much I wanted to rush out and smash the whole world to pieces. But stronger than the pain was the hate. A monstrous hatred strong enough to burn everything to ash and drag everyone down to hell with me. Lu Rian, Chun Wei, you pair of adulterous dogs. You destroyed Chu Zhao, so I will make you taste what real hell is like. My fingers curled unconsciously, nails digging deep into my palms, leaving crescent-shaped bloody marks, yet I felt not a trace of pain. I looked at Li Wei, my eyes probably as cold as an ice cave. "The photos, send them to me. All of them." Li Wei was scared by whatever was in my eyes. She stunned for a second before nodding hurriedly. Okay, I'll WeChat them to you right now." Her fingers tapped furiously on the screen. My phone vibrated. I lowered my head and looked at the photos that had finished transferring. Lu Rian's smile, Chun Wei's hand, the hotel lighting. These images were no longer needles pricking me. They had become fuel. Fuel to ignite the inferno deep within my heart. Revenge, a word terrifyingly clear, carrying the scent of blood and destruction, swirled madly in my cold mind. How to take revenge? Just beat them up? That was too cheap. I wanted to ruin their reputations, make them rot completely, make them crawl like maggots in front of everyone. A crazy yet brilliant idea, like the forked tongue of a viper, hissed as it emerged. The graduation ceremony. The whole school, teachers and students, including her mother who valued face more than her own life, would be there. Lu Rian, you like taking photos in hotels, don't you? I'll give you enough photos. I'll let everyone see clearly just how rotten you are beneath that pure, white lotus exterior. Chun Wei, you like to show off, don't you? I'll let you show off something huge. I'll let everyone know just how filthy you rich playboys really are. An indescribable, almost pathological excitement, accompanied by icy hatred, rushed from the soles of my feet straight to the top of my skull. The things inside me called kindness and moral limits had already died completely the moment Lu Rian smiled at Chun Wei in that bath towel. The Chu Zhao living now had only one thought: make them wish they were dead. I stood up abruptly. The chair legs scraped against the concrete floor, letting out a piercing shriek. Li Wei leaned back in fright. "Thanks." I dropped these two words, my voice so hoarse it didn't sound like mine. I grabbed the old phone with the spiderweb cracked screen from the table and a thin bank card from the drawer. The one I'd been saving in for 4 years to live a good life with Lou Ruyan after graduation. Inside was all my money. Scholarships, blood and sweat money from staying up all night coding freelance gigs. Every single cent scrimped and saved for between my teeth. Now, they had a new, more important mission. Spend it. Smash it all in. I was gonna buy a VIP pass to hell and kick that pair of dogs down there with my own hands. The dorm door slammed shut behind me with a loud clang, the sound crashing through the empty corridor like the lingering toll of a funeral bell. I gripped the thin bank card, my knuckles turning white from the strain. The sharp edges dug painfully into my palm. But that pain was trivial compared to the hollow void that had been rawly gouged out of my heart. For years, the weighty balance inside the car represented countless all-nighters spent coding with bloodshot eyes, layers of skin peeled away while handing out flyers under the scorching sun, and every penny pinched by ordering nothing but vegetable dishes in the cafeteria. They once stood for something called a future, a humble, shared dream built together with Lou Ruyan. Now, fuck the future, fuck the dream. This money had only one use now, fuel. Fuel to ignite the flames of revenge and burn Lou Ruyan and Chun Wei to ash. I stormed down the stairs, my footsteps fast and heavy, like a trapped beast thoroughly enraged, wanting nothing more than to tear its prey to shreds. The evening breeze blew cool against my face, but couldn't douse even a spark of the toxic fire burning ever hotter in my chest. Students walked by in 2s and 3s, laughing and playing, brimming with youth. Their world was bright and sunny, while mine was reduced to the dim hotel lighting in that photograph, and the intoxicated smile Lou Ruyan flashed at Chun Wei. That smile was like a poison-dipped knife, repeatedly slicing away at my remaining sanity. I needed a knife, an invisible knife that could surgically excise all their pretense and dignity. A hacker. The word floated like a ghost in my chaotic yet freakishly clear mind. Who to find? How to find them? Internet cafes. Those cheap joints filled with swirling smoke, and the clatter of keyboards were breeding grounds for all sorts of gray market deals. On the street behind the school, the neon signs lit up early, looking cheap and seedy. I pushed open the glass door of a place with a flashing sign reading SpeedNet Cafe. A heat wave mixed with the strong odors of cigarettes, instant noodles, and sweat hit me in the face, making my throat itch. Under the dim lights, rows of computer screens flickered with a ghostly blue glow, reflecting on faces that were either young or numb. I walked straight to a booth in the furthest corner. A man sat there, thin as a bamboo pole, wearing a crumpled black t-shirt. His hair was plastered to his forehead with grease, his eyes were sunken, and his complexion had the pallor of someone who hadn't seen the sun in years. He hunched over, almost burying himself in the screen. His 10 long, slender fingers danced across the keyboard, moving so fast they blurred. Dense lines of code scrolled rapidly across the screen like some mysterious, dangerous incantation. Beside him, cigarette butts were piled like a small mountain in the ashtray. He was the one. Someone like this was either a top-tier expert or a broker walking the edge of the darkness. I pulled out the chair opposite him and sat down heavily. The metal legs scraped against the floor, making a harsh, ear-piercing sound. Bamboo Pole didn't even look up. His voice was lazy and raspy from lack of sleep. 20 for the evening, 50 for the whole night. Scan the code to pay. He pointed at the QR code on the table. I'm not here to play. I lowered my voice, sounding like an underground agent making contact. I'm looking for someone to handle some business. His fingers finally paused for a split second. His eyelids lifted lazily, and his cloudy eyes glanced at me through the gaps in his greasy bangs before quickly dropping back to the screen. His tone was flat. You've got the wrong place, brother. We're a legitimate internet cafe. I let out a cold laugh, leaning forward with my elbows on the greasy table, staring dead at his eyes, which looked unusually focused in the screen's reflection. Legitimate? So that crawler script running on your screen is helping the police catch thieves. I recognized that specific format of code flow. It was stuff designed specifically for illegally scraping data. Bamboo Pole's typing fingers came to a sudden halt. He finally raised his head and looked me straight in the eye. A sharp glint flashed through his cloudy gaze, like a blade drawn in the dark night. He looked me up and down for a few seconds, seemingly assessing my weight and threat level. Interesting. He licked his cracked lips and pulled a smile that held no warmth. What do you want done? Let's be clear up front. I don't take jobs that break the law. That was a classic, nothing to see here disclaimer. It's not illegal. I squeezed the 3 words through my teeth, took out my beat-up phone, unlocked it, and opened the photos Li had sent. The screen's light reflected on my twisted face. I slid the phone in front of him, my finger tapping on the photo of Lu Ruyan and Chun Wei in the hotel room, my fingertip trembling slightly from the pressure. These two, the woman, Lu Ruyan, a senior at our school. The guy, Chun Wei, that rich kid who drives the sports car. I want more. Exciting footage of them. Last Friday night, Blue Ocean International Hotel, room 1608. Bamboo pole leaned in close to the screen, squinting to examine the photos, especially the one where Lu Ruyan was wrapped in a bath towel and Chun Wei was reaching out to pull it off. His Adam's apple bobbed imperceptibly, and a look of amusement and realization crept into his eyes. Oh, catching a cheater? He sneered, leaning back in his chair with his arms crossed over his chest, adopting the posture of someone waiting for the highest bidder. Blue Ocean International. 5-star. The surveillance and security systems aren't like some roadside motel. The difficulty isn't small, and the risk. He dragged out the last word, the implication clear. Name your price. I cut him off, wasting no time. My heart was pounding fast. Not from nerves, but from the morbid excitement of finally grasping that dark power. The rail-thin man extended 3 withered fingers, waving them before my eyes, and spoke unhurriedly. For this kind of job, you need a real pro. I'm just the middleman. I take a 30% cut. For the big boss to handle it, it's this much. He waggled the 3 fingers. 3,000. I frowned. 30,000. The rail-thin man spat out the words like shards of ice hitting the ground. Half down as a deposit, the rest once done. You'll get the video, guaranteed HD, and censored tricky angles. The content will be absolutely spectacular. The corners of his mouth stretched into a lewd grin. 30,000. The number hit my chest like a heavy hammer. I only had a little over 40,000 in my account. My entire fortune for years of blood, sweat, and humble hope. In an instant, the image of Lu Ruyan nestled in Chun Wei's arms, the look of gratitude in her eyes when I sent money for her sick mother, the pathetic anticipation for the future as the numbers in my bank account slowly grew. It all exploded in my brain, fragments flying everywhere. 15,000 deposit? I heard my own voice asking, dry as sandpaper. Right, 15,000. Fair trade, no cheating. The rail-thin man stared at me, his eyes like a vulture sizing up dying prey, holding a mix of pity and cruel certainty. Brother, you look like a ruthless one. Whether it's worth it or not, you weigh that yourself. But this kind of grudge, fists alone won't settle it. Worth it? The image of Lu Ruyan wrapped in a bath towel, smiling at Chun Wei, took over my mind again. It was like a red-hot branding iron, scorching my soul until it screamed. Hate, like surging magma, instantly swallowed all hesitation and reluctance. Screw the money. Screw the future. I want them dead right now. Deal. I slammed the table. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried a desperate madness. Account number. I'll transfer it now. The rail-thin man seemed surprised by my decisiveness. He paused for a moment, then tapped a few keys on his keyboard, pulling up an overseas anonymous payment page. He turned the screen toward me. Straightforward. Transfer it here. Within 3 days, you'll have news. I took out my phone, my fingers not trembling in the slightest, and opened the banking app. Input account. Input amount. 15,000,00. Looking at the pulsing number on the screen, that was 4 years of sweat, 4 years of expectation, 4 years of delusional wishful thinking. Now, they were turning into a string of cold code, about to flow into some dark corner. Confirm. Fingerprint authorization. Ding. A notification sound, faint enough to be almost inaudible. The balance in the card instantly shrank by a large chunk. My heart felt like it was being squeezed hard by an invisible hand. Following the sharp pain came a strange, destructive pleasure, like smashing one's most treasured possession with one's own hands. Money sent. I put away my phone. My voice was terribly calm. Only I knew the storm raging inside. 3 days. I want to see the goods. Don't worry. The rail-thin man grinned, revealing teeth yellowed by smoke. Just wait for the show, brother. I stood up, not sparing him another glance, and walked out of the internet cafe. The turbid air outside rushed into my lungs, carrying the city's dust and the smell of exhaust. I looked up at the gray sky. There wasn't a single star. The bank card in my pocket felt light, like a piece of waste paper. The remaining money wasn't enough. The projection at the graduation ceremony. I needed a stage that could instantly blow everyone away. The school auditorium, that expensive projection and sound system. The control room was the key. Money. I still needed money to grease the wheels. A blurry figure surfaced in my chaotic thoughts. Fatty Zhang from the logistics department. That guy. Slick, worldly, greedy for small advantages, and in charge of the auditorium keys and equipment maintenance. I took a deep breath. The cold air tasted of rust as it poured into my lungs. But like gasoline, it only fueled the poisonous fire named revenge burning at the bottom of my heart. Turning around, I walked toward the brightly lit, gaudy sign of the Gold Lion pawn shop outside the school gates. The watch on my wrist was the only valuable thing my dad had left me. It was an old-fashioned mechanical watch. The dial was worn, and it didn't keep time very well anymore, but the case was solid gold. No matter how hard things got in the past, I never considered touching it. But now, I took it off without hesitation, the cold metal strap clinging to the lingering warmth on my wrist. I pushed open the heavy glass door of the pawn shop. A scent mixed of old wood, dust, and a faint hint of mold hit me in the face. Behind the counter sat a dry, thin old man wearing reading glasses, polishing a jade bracelet with a velvet cloth. "Boss, I want to pawn something." I slammed the watch onto the glass counter with a crisp smack. The old man lifted his eyelids, leisurely picked up the watch to examine it against the light, and then used a loupe to scrutinize the movement and the hallmarks inside the case. Vintage Omega, Seamaster Series, 18K solid gold case. The old man muttered methodically. He put down the loupe, his cloudy eyes looking at me through the lenses. "Condition is average. The movement needs servicing. I'll give you a fair price. 8,000. Noti Themschen. 8,000. Less than I expected, but it was enough. Deal." I had no desire to haggle. The old man glanced at me in surprise, likely never having seen such a decisive seller. He deftly wrote out the receipt and counted the cash. A stack of red bills reeking of ink was pushed in front of me. I grabbed the money and stuffed it into my pocket. The watch that had accompanied me for so many years, carrying the vague memory of a father's love, was tossed by the old man into a nearby red velvet-lined tray, like a piece of trash. Walking out of the pawn shop, the night wind felt colder. The money in my pocket and the $15,000 for the down payment now in my account, the pawn money plus what was left on my card, felt heavy, yet carried a nauseating stench of blood. I had the money. The knife would be next. Lu Rian, Chunwei. Enjoy your last few days of sweetness. On graduation day, I'll give you a graduation gift you'll never forget. 3 days. It felt like being deep-fried in a wok of oil for a full 72 hours. Every second was stretched interminably long, carrying a scorching scent of char. During the day in class, the professor's voice buzzed, but not a single word made it into my ears. All that flickered before my eyes were fragments of that hotel photo. At night, lying on the hard bunk, whether my eyes were open or closed, I saw Lu Rian's intoxicated smile and Chunwei's hand reaching for that bath towel. Hatred grew like vines in the darkness, wildly wrapping around my heart, constricting tighter and tighter, bringing a suffocating sense of pleasure. There was no word from Slim Bamboo. The $15,000 missing from my bank card was like a massive black hole, devouring my remaining sanity. Was I scammed? The thought occasionally reared its head like a venomous snake, only to be suppressed by an even more insane thought. So what if I was scammed? Worst case scenario, I'll just go there with a knife myself. We'll all die together. On the afternoon of the 4th day, my phone screen finally lit up. A text message from a completely unknown virtual number contained only a cold link and an equally cold string of password characters. It was done. Blood instantly rushed to my head, then froze a second later. I stormed out of the classroom, practically crashing through the door of a toilet stall and locking it behind me. The cramped space was filled with the pungent smell of disinfectant. Leaning my back against the cold door panel, my fingers slightly spasming from the tension, I clicked on the link. The phone screen jumped to a pure black page with a play button in the center. My heart drummed in my chest, the vibrations making my eardrums hum. I took a deep breath and, with a near-masochistic sense of anticipation, pressed the play button. The screen suddenly lit up. The lighting was that same dim, ambiguous warm tone. The angle was obviously a hidden camera shot, coming from high up in a corner of the room. The footage was terrifyingly clear. Even the fine texture of the bedding was visible. In the center of the frame were Lu Ruyan and Chun Wei. The familiar cotton pajamas Lu Ruyan wore, washed until they were faded, were gone. They had been replaced by a black lace slip dress so thin it was almost transparent, cut short to the top of her thighs, with a neckline so low it exposed nearly half the contour of her breasts. Chun Wei was leaning against the headboard, wearing that cynical yet controlling smile unique to rich second-generation heirs. The scene was obscene. In front of me, Lu Ruyan was always shy and innocent. She would blush even when holding hands. But now, beside another man, she was unrestrained and oozing seduction, like the lowest kind of whore. Her twisting waist, her glazed eyes, her submissive posture. Every frame was like a steel needle violently stabbing into my eyeballs, piercing my brain. A beast-like growl tore from my throat, and I slammed my fist against the metal door of the stall, making a dull thud. Severe pain shot through my knuckles, but it couldn't suppress the soul-tearing agony and sky-high hatred exploding from the deepest depths of my heart. Chun Wei's smug face magnified before my eyes. What gave him the right? Because his daddy had some filthy money? Because of that flashy sports car of his? How could he wantonly toy with and trample on someone's feelings and dignity like this? How could he humiliate me, Chu Zhao, like this? The video kept playing, the scenes becoming even more obscene. Enough. That's enough. I slammed the pause button. The screen froze on Lu Ruyan's face, drowning in lust, and Chun Wei's smug, triumphant grin. My stomach churned violently. I bent over and dry-heaved into the filthy toilet, but nothing came up. Only the bitter burn of bile scorching my throat. Disgusting. It was truly fucking disgusting. But even more than that was the hatred, cold and all-consuming, threatening to swallow me whole. I hated Lu Ruyan's betrayal and promiscuity. I hated Chun Wei's arrogance and malice. I hated this goddamn world. This video would be the perfect graduation gift for them. I leaned against the cold wall, gasping for air, my forehead slick with cold sweat. Staring at the frozen image on the screen, that crushing pain and nausea began to undergo a strange transformation. A darker, more violent force like black crude oil gushed from the gaping wound in my heart. It instantly filled the void, bringing with it a thrilling, destructive sense of fulfillment. The corners of my mouth twitched upward uncontrollably as a cold, twisted smile crept across my face. Lu Ruyan, Chun Wei, enjoy these last moments while you can. On graduation day, the entire faculty, the student body, and your mother, who values her reputation above all else, will see the real you, Lu Ruyan. They will see exactly how Chun Wei toyed with their pure campus belle. I exited the playback page and carefully saved and encrypted the link and password. Then, I dialed the number for Fatty Zhang from the logistics department. Hello, Brother Zhang? It's me, Chu Zhao. My voice sounded unnervingly calm, even laced with deliberate fawning. Could I trouble you with a small favor for graduation day? I want to give my classmates a surprise. Before the memorial video plays, I'd like to slot in a short clip we recorded privately. A heartfelt confession. Yes, exactly. Just a few minutes. It's absolutely positive energy. From the other end came Fatty Zhang's muffled voice. He seemed to be chewing something. Little Chu, you know there are regulations for the auditorium equipment. We can't just mess around with it. If it breaks, rules are dead, but people are alive, Brother Zhang. I cut it immediately, keeping my tone light. Help me out. It's just a few minutes. I guarantee nothing will go wrong. Tell you what, when are you free? My treat at that new Dynasty Seafood near the school gate. I hear their king crab is excellent. Dynasty Seafood? Fatty Zhang's voice clearly paused, his tone softening significantly. Oh, yeah, all right, seeing as you know how to conduct yourself. But you have to keep it tight, 2 minutes. And he lowered his voice. I might forget the control room key on the doorframe that day. You go in and do it yourself. Be quick about it, and leave as soon as you're done. If anything happens, I know nothing about it. Understood. Thank you so much, Brother Zhang. Don't worry, it'll be clean and quick. I agreed repeatedly, though my expression remained frozen in ice. Hanging up, I looked at the frozen image of Lu Rian's debauched face on the screen. That twisted smile surfaced again, growing wider. The stage was set. The props were in place. Now I just needed the leads to make their entrance. The air on campus during graduation season drifted with the scent of parting, a mix of gardenia fragrance and a trace of restless anxiety. The sunlight was dazzling, almost blinding, casting mottled shadows on the floor through the auditorium's tall, stained glass windows. I wore a cheap, rented bachelor's gown. The oversized robe hung on me, making me look like an out-of-place ghost. I blended into the bustling, excitedly chatting crowd, making my way toward the school's magnificent auditorium. Surrounding me was the noise of laughter, the click of camera shutters, hugs, and blessings. None of this had anything to do with me. My world had shrunk to the tiny USB drive in my pocket. The cold metal casing felt like a branding iron, searing against my thigh. Inside it lay a nuclear bomb strong enough to destroy everything. Lu Ruyan and Chun Wei's heartfelt confession. The auditorium was packed, a sea of black heads. The massive crystal chandelier cast a soft glow, rendering the space solemn and magnificent. The air was thick with perfume, sweat, and an expectation called a bright future. School leaders and professors were already seated on the rostrum, their faces glowing with health. My gaze, like an ice pick dipped in poison, stabbed precisely toward the front of the crowd. Lu Ruyan and her mother. Lu Ruyan had dressed meticulously today. Under her well-fitted bachelor's gown, she wore an elegant white dress. She wore light makeup, looking pure and lovely, like a lily that knew nothing of the world's filth. She tilted her head, holding her mother's arm intimately with a sweet smile on her face, whispering something. Her eyes were filled with a longing for the future and a hint of the smug satisfaction of being spoiled. Her mother, Zhoulan, a woman in her 40s who still retained her charm. Her features bore a striking resemblance to Lu Ruyan, though her contours were colder and more mature, carrying a resilience honed by life and a trace of imperceptible weariness. She wore a tasteful, off-white suit, her hair meticulously pinned behind her head. At this moment, she was smiling as she listened to her daughter, her eyes gentle, holding the unique pride and satisfaction of a mother. She seemed to enjoy the admiring gazes cast by the people around them upon her beautiful daughter. Watching this heartwarming mother and daughter, looking at Lu Rian's pure and innocent appearance, a strong sense of nausea rushed straight to my throat. It was this face, these misty eyes, that deceived me for 4 years. It was this bitch who acted pure in public, but moaned wantonly for another man in a hotel room. And Zhoulan, this woman whom I once sincerely called Auntie, whom I waited on hand and foot when she was sick, did she know what kind of filth and wretchedness lay beneath her daughter's skin? Hatred, like a cold snake, coiled around my heart, tightening its grip. I forced myself to look away and swept my gaze to the other side. Chun Wei. Sure enough, he was sitting in the most conspicuous front row of the finance department, surrounded by several equally well-dressed lackeys. He wasn't wearing an academic gown, just a gaudy hot pink shirt with the collar open, revealing a section of a gold chain. His hair was carefully styled with gel. He sat with his legs crossed, laughing loudly as if no one else was around. His expression was arrogant, and his eyes occasionally glanced toward Lu Ruyan with undisguised possessiveness and amusement. He seemed to sense my gaze and lazily turned his head. When he saw it was me, his lips immediately curled into an undisguised sneer full of contempt and provocation. He even raised his hand and made an extremely obscene gesture at me, circling his thumb and index finger while thrusting another finger rapidly inside the circle. The lackeys beside him roared with laughter, the sound grating on my ears. Provocation. Naked provocation. A violent, murderous intent instantly broke through the dam of my reason. I almost rushed over, regardless of the consequences, to tear his disgusting face apart with my teeth. My fingernails dug deep into my palms. The sharp pain barely allowed me to maintain a shred of clarity. Calm down, Zhu Zhao. If you rush up now, all your efforts will be wasted. I clenched my back teeth tightly, a thick taste of blood filling my mouth. Yet, I forced a stiff smile onto my face, one that looked uglier than crying, and slowly nodded at Qinwei. Qinwei paused for a moment, probably not expecting this reaction from me. Then the contempt on his face deepened, looking at me like I was a hopeless loser. He scoffed, turned his head back, and continued his loud talk with his cronies. Good, keep laughing. Soon, you won't be able to laugh anymore. The ceremony officially began. Long-winded speeches by leaders, speeches by outstanding graduate representatives. Time ticked by second. I sat in the corner like a lifeless stone statue. Only my hand in my pocket tightly gripped that USB drive, my palm covered in cold sweat. Finally, the moment I had been enduring arrived. The host walked to the front of the stage with a beaming smile, his voice broadcasting through the microphone across the entire hall. Next is a special commemorative segment for this year's graduates. We will review everyone's youthful elegance over the past 4 years through the big screen. First, let us enjoy the graduation commemorative short film meticulously produced by the Student Union. Youth Never Ends. The lights in the auditorium slowly dimmed, leaving only a few spotlights above the stage. The huge screen lit up, and accompanied by sentimental background music, familiar campus scenes began to play. Studying hard in the library, sweating profusely on the sports field, laughing under the cherry blossom trees. A wave of nostalgic sighs and low, sobbing rose from the audience. Lu Rian nestled beside Zhou Lan, watching a shot flash across the screen, probably a group photo of her dormitory, and raised her hand to gently wipe the corner of her eye. Hypocrisy. Nauseating hypocrisy. My heart battered crazily against my ribs, the sound of rushing blood thundering in my eardrums. It's now. While everyone's attention was attracted by the big screen, and under the cover of darkness, I moved like a silent shadow. Quickly standing up, I hunched over and stuck to the base of the wall, moving toward the inconspicuous iron door at the rear side of the stage that bore a sign reading "Restricted Area. Authorized personnel only." My heart felt like it was about to jump out of my throat. Every step landed on the thunderous beat of my own heart. The sentimental music and narration echoing in the hall masked my rapid breathing and footsteps. The iron door was ajar, leaving a narrow crack. Fatty Zhang had indeed forgotten to lock it. I slipped inside and gently pulled the door shut behind me. The control room was plunged in darkness, save for the dense array of blinking red and green indicator lights on the machines, resembling countless prying eyes. The air was thick with the scent of dust and the acrid smell of burnt electronics. The massive main console loomed before me. The screen was still active, displaying the interface for the commemorative video. Plugged in next to it was a USB drive labeled Commemorative Video Backup. Time was tight. I snatched out the backup drive and thrust in the cold USB drive from my pocket, the one containing pure hell. My fingers trembled violently from a mix of extreme tension and exhilaration. I could barely grip the mouse. Relying on the scant information I'd looked up online in a surge of manic ruthlessness, I worked the main computer with feverish speed. I found the playlist, deleted the original backup file, and dragged a single video file from my drive to the very front of the queue. The glow of the screen illuminated my twisted, feverish face. I looked like a grinning demon. Operation complete. The whole process had taken less than 20 seconds. I yanked out my drive, jammed the backup drive back into its original slot, and didn't dare linger for a second. Like a startled rabbit, I turned and dashed out of the control room, gently pulled the door shut, and vanished into the shadows of the heavy curtains in the auditorium's side wing. My heart was still pounding like a war drum. My graduation gown was soaked with cold sweat, sticking clammy and chilling against my back. I leaned against the cold wall, gasping for air, my chest heaving like a bellows. Did it work? Did it really work? Just then, the background music on stage faded into a soothing outro, and the screen froze on a giant group photo of all the graduates, their smiles radiant. The host walked back to the front of the stage, her voice trembling with just the right amount of emotion. Beautiful times are always fleeting, but the memories of youth will never fade. Next, let's take a short break while the staff prepares for the next segment. Before she could finish, perhaps to bridge the gap, or perhaps because the operator habitually hit the play button, or because I had set the cue to autoplay, it happened. On the massive screen, the group photo brimming with youthful smiles vanished in an instant. The entire auditorium was instantly plunged into a dead, silent darkness. Even the background music stopped eerily. What's going on? Is it an equipment failure? A ripple of commotion and confused murmurs rose from the audience. The next second, the screen suddenly lit up again. It was no longer the sun-drenched campus. Dim, ambiguous lighting. A picture so high definition every detail was visible. A black lace nightgown, a twisting waist, glazed eyes, a close-up of a man's rough hands slapping against snow-white skin. And that face, the innocent campus beauty, Lu Ruyan, crying out in pleasure. Her expression, one of intoxicated depravity. Lu Ruyan's cloying moans and Chun Wei's lewd banter, amplified countless times by the auditorium's top-tier surround sound system, exploded like a thunderclap, instantly filling every corner of the hall. Crystal clear, high fidelity, 360-degree surround sound. That feels so good. Louder. Let everyone hear you. Time seemed to freeze in that moment. The expressions on the faces of the 2,000 students and teachers off stage, and all the leaders and professors on stage, instantly solidified. The emotion, nostalgia, and anticipation of the previous second froze on their faces, then shattered inch by inch like fragile glass, revealing the disbelief, absolute shock, and horror underneath. Everyone looked as if they had been hit with a paralytic spell, staring straight at the big screen, their eyes nearly popping out of their sockets. The air seemed to solidify into concrete, heavy and suffocating. All that remained were the moans and lewd remarks from the speakers, each louder and more depraved than the last, echoing madly through the deathly silent auditorium, assaulting everyone's eardrums and nerves. A scream, shrill and distorted, tore through the suffocating silence like a sharp knife. It was Lu Ruyan. The blood had drained from her face the instant the screen lit up, leaving her as pale as a crumpled sheet of paper. Those big eyes, usually so dewy and pitiable, were now staring so wide they looked ready to split, filled with absolute terror, shame, and a complete mental breakdown. It was as if she had been smashed by an invisible giant hammer. She sprang up from her seat, clutching her head tightly with both hands, screaming madly and hysterically. "Turn it off! Turn it off!" Her voice was so shrill it cracked, trembling with sobs and utter despair. She wanted to cover the eyes of the people next to her. She wanted to lunge toward the stage, but immense terror and shame turned her legs to jelly. She collapsed like a pile of mud into the aisle in front of the seats, curling into a ball and convulsing violently, letting out heart-tearing wails. Her carefully maintained image of purity, the halo of the campus belle she took such pride in, all her dignity and her future, in this moment by this giant screen, in front of the whole school, in front of everyone she knew and didn't know. It was all torn to shreds, trampled into the mud. Another, even more shrill scream. This time it was Jolan. The second the image appeared, the gentleness and pride on her face instantly shattered. Her eyes stared dead at the woman on the screen, that debauched woman being wantonly toyed with by a man, her daughter. Her body swayed violently, as if all her bones had been extracted. On that face, which still retained its charm, all color drained away, leaving only a deathly ash white and the despair of a collapsing world. She reached out a hand, vainly trying to grab something, her throat making a gasping he sound. Then her whole body fell stiffly backward, crashing heavily onto the seat with a thud. Her eyes rolled back. Unable to withstand the immense blow, she fainted on the spot. Mom, what's wrong?" Lu Ruyan's wailing grew, even more miserable and desperate. Scrambling and crawling, she threw herself at her unconscious mother, shaking her desperately. Tears and mucus streamed down her face, smearing her makeup. She looked as wretched as a stray dog. Fuck, who did this? Who the fuck did this? Turn it off. Turn it off. A furious roar exploded like a thunderclap. Chenwei, the arrogance and amusement on his face had long vanished, replaced by extreme shock, rage, and a trace of imperceptible panic. Like an enraged lion, he violently shoved aside his lackeys. With eyes bloodshot and veins bulging on his forehead, he charged frantically toward the stage, pointing at the control room and roaring as he ran. Turn it off. I'm gonna fucking kill you. The entire auditorium erupted. Gasps, screams, the sound of sharp intakes of breath, and incredulous chatter burst forth like a tsunami. Everyone stood up, their gazes like searchlights focusing on the crumbling Lu Ruyan, the unconscious Zhou Lan, and the furious Chun Wei. On the giant screen, the obscene footage continued to loop. Lu Ruyan's wanton cries and Chun Wei's lewd remarks filled the air like demonic sounds, slicing through everyone's nerves again and again. Chaos. Absolute chaos. And I, Chu Zhao, I stood quietly in the heavy shadows of the stage wings, like a detached ghost. The coldness of the wall seeped through my academic gown, but it couldn't cool the surging, magma-hot pleasure coursing through my body. Watching Lu Ruyan collapse on the ground wailing like a dog, watching her eternally elegant mother passed out like a rag, watching Chun Wei raging like a headless fly, an indescribable, almost suffocating sense of satisfaction shot through my body like an electric current, bringing waves of intense shivering. It felt good. It felt so fucking good. And this was only the beginning. My gaze passed over the chaotic crowd, over the broken Lu Ruyan, and landed on the pale but still beautiful face of the unconscious Zhou Lan. The corners of my mouth slowly curved into a cold, twisted arc. The real show was yet to come. The chaos in the auditorium was like cold water thrown into boiling oil. Once it exploded, it couldn't be calmed. Screams, cries, angry roars, chaotic footsteps, the clatter of overturned chairs and tables. A cacophony of noise battered the eardrums. Security guards rushed in like headless flies, trying to maintain order, only to be shoved this way and that by the surging crowd. Someone tried to shut down the equipment, but the door to the control room had been slammed shut and locked during the chaos, trapping the people inside for the moment. On the screen, that obscene live show continued to loop tirelessly. Lu Ruyan's wanton moans and Chun Wei's lewd teasing became the jarring soundtrack to this absurd farce. Hidden in the shadows of the heavy curtains, I watched with cold detachment the hellfire I had personally ignited. Lu Ruyan was still collapsed in the aisle, clutching the unconscious Zhou Lan, crying her heart out. Her voice was hoarse and distorted, her body trembling like a fallen leaf in the autumn wind. Her carefully styled hair was plastered messily against a face covered in tears and snot, and her expensive academic gown was covered in dust. She had completely collapsed, like a flower trampled into the mud and utterly crushed. At the edge of the stage, Chun Wei roared like a trapped beast. He tried to rush the stage several times, but was blocked by the chaotic crowd and the arriving security guards. His eyes were crimson as he pointed toward the control room, hurling abuse. Veins bulged on his neck, and that face, which usually wore a devil-may-care smile, now held only hideous rage and a trace of panic he couldn't hide. He probably never dreamed that his record of toying with women would be live-streamed to the entire school in such a manner. Enough. The appetizer had sufficiently whetted the appetite. I retreated silently, like a drop of water blending into the edge of a pot of boiling oil. While no one was paying attention, I slipped out through the side door of the auditorium. The glaring sunlight outside made me squint slightly, but the icy darkness in my heart grew even denser. The thrill of revenge was like strong spirits, burning through my nerves and bringing a dizzying satisfaction. But this wasn't enough. Far from enough. Lu Ruyan ruined, Chun Wei disgraced. At most, that counted as peeling off a layer of their skin. What I wanted was to shatter their bones and suck out the marrow. I wanted them to feel fear and pain from the depths of their souls. Chenwei, the instigator, the humiliation and trampling he inflicted upon me must be repaid in blood. I took out my phone, opened a contact I almost never used, and sent a text. Recipient, Liwei. Send me Chenwei's current location and a place he frequents that is quiet enough. Immediately, Liwei's reply was shockingly fast, arriving almost instantly. An address, followed by a bonus message. Back alley, a night charm bar, blind spot for cameras. He just rushed out like a madman. He's probably going there to cool off. Night charm bar? Not far from the school, one of the money pits for Chun Wei and his gang of rich playboys. The back alley? Good. Secluded enough. I put away my phone, took off the academic gown that symbolized graduation and prospects, and tossed it into a roadside trash can. Underneath, I wore an ordinary black hoodie. I pulled up the hood, lowering the brim to cover most of my face. Then, I walked toward the cluttered small street at the back gate of the school and stopped in front of a hardware store. Boss, I need to buy a wrench. My voice was calm and unwavering. The owner was a balding middle-aged man, smoking a cigarette while reading a newspaper. Hearing me, he lifted his eyelids slightly. Which kind? Adjustable? Fixed. Fixed. A heavy one. I added. The owner fished out a heavy, solid steel wrench from under the counter. It gleamed with a cold, hard metallic luster and was half an arm's length long. This one's got a kick. It's for fixing big trucks. He weighed in his hand, then handed it to me. I took it. The cold sensation of the metal spread from my palm, the heavy weight bringing a strange, reassuring sense of solidity. After paying, I stuffed the wrench into the large pocket of my hoodie, feeling it drag down heavily. I turned and walked toward the direction of Night Charm. My pace wasn't fast, but every step was exceptionally steady. In the shadow of the hood, my eyes were as cold as the ice on the Siberian tundra. The bar's back alley, a truly filthy corner. The air reeked of a mixture of cheap alcohol, vomit, and rotting trash. The walls were covered in messy graffiti. A few fat rats, startled by my footsteps, squeaked and scurried into the dark corners. Deep in the alley, as expected, there were no surveillance cameras. Chenwei had his back to the alley entrance, leaning against the door of a flashy, bright yellow sports car, a Porsche 911, furiously making a phone call. He yanked irritably at the gold chain around his neck, roaring into the phone, his voice echoing in the narrow alley. Fuck. Investigate. Dig into it until you find something. It must be that bastard Chu Zhao. It's no one else but him. I'm gonna kill him. Sink him in the river to feed the fish. Kill his whole family. He was clearly mad with rage, incoherent, and completely failed to notice someone approaching from behind. I walked silently up behind him, stopping less than 2 meters away. I could smell the strong mixture of alcohol and cologne on him. Right now, Chenwei, I spoke. My voice wasn't loud, but in the silent back alley, it was exceptionally clear, like ice shattering. Chenwei's roaring came to an abrupt halt. He whipped around. When he saw me, dressed in all black with my hood pulled low, the rage on his face was instantly replaced by astonishment, which then morphed into an even more twisted ferocity. Zhu Zhao, motherfucker, it really was you, you dog bastard. Like a thoroughly enraged bull, eyes spitting fire, he threw his phone down and lunged at me, swinging his fist. If I don't cripple you today, my name isn't Shun. His fist carried the sound of wind, heavy and powerful. He had clearly had some training, but I was faster. The instant his fist swung out, my right hand, hidden in my pocket, shot out like lightning. The heavy steel wrench traced a cold arc through the dim light. Crack! A teeth-aching, crisp sound of bone fracturing rang out simultaneously with Chun Wei's scream, sounding like a slaughtered pig. The wrench struck his swinging right wrist with deadly precision. The immense force shattered his wrist bones into a comminuted fracture instantly. Ah! My hand! My hand! Chun Wei's scream instantly changed pitch, filled with disbelief and terrified agony. Cradling his twisted, limply dangling right wrist, he staggered backward. All color drained from his face, and beads of cold sweat the size of beans instantly covered his forehead. Hurts, does it? We're just getting started. I took a step forward, my movements distinct and unhesitating. My left hand shot out like an iron clamp. seizing his uninjured left wrist with precision and twisting it violently. Ah! Chun-Wei let out another shriek as his body was spun halfway around, his left arm wrenched behind his back. I raised the wrench in my right hand again, accompanied by the whistling wind. I smashed it ruthlessly into his left elbow joint. Thud! A dull sound echoed, accompanied by the distinct crack of bone. Our Chun-Wei's scream was no longer human. His body convulsed violently, his left arm bent at a grotesque angle. But that wasn't enough. I released his limp left arm. The moment he curled up from the excruciating pain, my right knee drove into his abdomen like a battering ram, carrying the full weight of my body. Ugh! Chun-Wei's scream was cut short, replaced by a painful grunt. His eyes bulged, and a mixture of stomach acid and alcohol spewed from his mouth. Like a cooked shrimp, he bowed his back and collapsed in agony, curling up on the filthy ground, his body spasming violently. I looked down at him from above, as if viewing a pile of sludge. The steel wrench in my hand was still dripping with a viscous liquid. I couldn't tell if it was sweat or blood. I crouched down, tapping the cold metal face of the wrench against his cheek, which was twisted in agony. "Rich kid, think you're something special." My voice was terrifyingly calm, as if I were stating a trivial fact. Chun-Wei gasped in pain, his eyes filled with extreme terror and malice. He wanted to curse, but the agony reduced him to making ragged, gasping sounds. "Like playing with other men's women?" "Huh?" I asked again, tightening my grip on the wrench as my gaze fell upon his uninjured right knee. "No. Please." Chun-Wei seemed to sense what was coming. An overwhelming fear crushed everything else, and he finally began to beg for mercy. His voice was broken by pain and terror, tears and snot flowing freely, his previous arrogance completely gone. Too late. Expressionless, I raised the wrench, aimed it at his right kneecap, and with all my might, smashed it down. Crack! The sound of fracturing bone was duller and more absolute this time. It was accompanied by Chun-Wei's gut-wrenching, inhuman howl that seemed ready to pierce the clouds. Ah! The scream echoed wildly in the narrow back alley, as shrill as the wailing of a vengeful ghost. I stood up and shook off the filth clinging to the wrench. I looked at Chun-Wei, twitching like a pile of mud on the ground, screaming, having lost control of his bowels and bladder. His right leg was twisted at an absolutely impossible angle. Wrist, elbow, knee, 3 comminuted fractures. The intense pain prevented him from even passing out, forcing him to endure this hellish torture while fully conscious. Listening to his screams, each one louder than the last, like heavenly music, an indescribable, overwhelming sense of satisfaction washed over me like a tidal wave. Every cell in my body was cheering, screaming. Yes, it felt so fucking good. This sound was more melodious than any symphony in the world. I took one last look at the writhing piece of trash on the ground, then casually tossed the blood-stained wrench into a foul-smelling green dumpster nearby, where it landed with a muffled clang. Then, pulling my hoodie tight, I turned and walked out of the filthy alley with unhurried composure. Behind me, Chun-Wei's heart-rending screams served as the perfect prelude to the final movement of my symphony of revenge. Next, time to pay a visit to my dear ex-girlfriend and that auntie who still retained her charm. The sky had turned overcast without me noticing. Thick, lead-gray clouds hung low and heavy, bringing a suffocating sense of an approaching storm. The air was muggy and damp, sticking to the skin like a layer of airtight plastic wrap. I didn't return to the school, that place of chaos which had long since become a laughingstock and source of gossip, but walked straight to the relatively clean community hospital nearby. Given the farce of the graduation ceremony and Jolan's fainting spell, it didn't take much brain power to figure out that mother and daughter would most likely be sent there. The smell of disinfectant in the hospital was strong and pungent. The hallway lights were a ghastly white, illuminating faces that were either pained or numb. I moved through them silently like a wandering spirit, quickly stopping in front of an observation room. The door was ajar. Through the crack, I could see what was happening inside. Jolan lay on a simple cot against the wall. Her face remained pale, but her eyes were open, staring hollowly at the ceiling. She was still wearing that beige suit, though the collar was a bit messy. It had lost its former propriety and elegance, adding a touch of fragility to her appearance. A nurse had just removed the 4 needle from the back of her hand and was whispering instructions. Lu Rian sat on a plastic stool by the bed, her back to the door. Her graduation gown was gone. She was wearing only a wrinkled white dress, the one she had worn underneath before the ceremony. Her hair was draped in a messy scatter, and her shoulders were still trembling slightly. Even from a distance, one could feel the despair and lifelessness radiating from her, so thick it seemed impossible to dissolve. She was like a puppet on a string. Whatever the nurse said, she nodded mechanically. The nurse pushed her card out and left. Only the mother and daughter remained in the ward. A deathly silence ensued. "Mom!" Lu Rian's voice was terribly hoarse, thick with the sound of weeping. She slowly turned around, reaching out to grasp Jolan's hand. "Mom, I am sorry. I was wrong. I was really wrong. Scold me. Hit me." Before her hand could even touch Jolan jerked her hand back as if bitten by a viper, her body even shrinking toward the inner side of the bed. She finally turned her hollow eyes to look at Lu Ruyan. There was no blame in that gaze, no anger. Only a dead, ashen defeat and an estrangement that cut to the bone. "Don't touch me." Jolan's voice was faint, yet cold and hard as an ice pick, carrying the exhaustion of a dead heart. "Ruyan, you make me sick." "Mom." Lu Ruyan looked as if she had been struck by lightning. Her body swayed violently, her outstretched hand freezing in midair as tears instantly burst the dam, surging forth. "Mom, I didn't mean to. I was just confused for a moment. It was Chun Wei. He forced me. He said he would be good to me. He said..." "Enough." Jolan cut her off sharply, her voice rising, filled with uncontrollable trembling and pain. "Forced you? Did you look forced in that video? That loose behavior, the way you fawned over him. The whole school saw it. Everyone heard it. In all my life, Jolan, have never been so humiliated. You have completely disgraced me." She gasped for breath violently, her chest heaving, looking as if she might faint again at any second. Lu Ruyan was completely crushed by her mother's gaze and words. She covered her face, letting out a suppressed cry like the wailing of a small wounded animal, her shoulders shaking violently. Jolan looked at her no longer. She cast her hollow gaze back to the pale ceiling as 2 lines of cloudy tears slid silently from the corners of her eyes and disappeared into her hair. The air in the ward was oppressive, making it hard to breathe. Between mother and daughter lay an invisible abyss named betrayal and shame. Just then, the storm that had been brewing all afternoon finally poured down. Bean-sized raindrops smashed crazily against the window pane, crackling loudly, instantly forming a vast white curtain of water. The wind howled, sweeping up fallen leaves and trash from the ground. The sky darkened at a visible rate, resembling the end of the world. I pushed open the door, which had been left ajar. Creak! The slight sound was exceptionally piercing in the ward, which was filled only with the sounds of rain and weeping. Lu Rian's crying stopped abruptly. Jolan's hollow gaze focused instantly, shooting toward the door with astonishment and a trace of imperceptible fear. I walked in and gently closed the door behind me, cutting off the light and sound from the hallway. I pulled down the hood of my sweatshirt, revealing my expressionless face. My gaze lingered for a moment on Lu Rian's face, which was streaming with tears and written with terror, before settling on Jolan's face. Pale, yet still beautiful. The air in the ward instantly froze. Lu Rian looked as if she had seen a ghost. She shrank back violently, pressing herself tightly against the cold wall, staring at me in terror. Her lips trembled, but she couldn't utter a single word. The look in Jolan's eyes was complex to the extreme. Shock, anger, shame, and a trace of indescribable fear. She struggled, trying to sit up, but her weak body wouldn't cooperate. Zhu Zhao. Jolan's voice was dry and hoarse. What are you doing here? She tried hard to maintain the dignity of an elder, but her trembling voice betrayed the panic in her heart. I didn't answer immediately. My gaze lingered for a moment on Jolan's chest, which was heaving slightly from her emotional agitation, and on her face, which, despite being pale and haggard, could not hide her lingering charm. Then I took a step, walked straight to the bedside, and sat down on the plastic stool where Lu Ruyan had just been sitting. The position was very close to Jolan. "Auntie," I began, my voice surprisingly calm, even holding a trace of strange gentleness. Yet my gaze was like a cold probe, piercing straight into the depths of Jolan's eyes. "Are you feeling any better?" Jolan was made thoroughly uncomfortable by my proximity and that eerily calm tone. She subconsciously shifted her body backward, her eyes full of wariness. I'm Fine. You should go. You're not welcome here." She glanced at Lu Ruyan, who was huddled in the corner shivering, her tone turning cold and hard. "Your affairs. I can't handle them, and I don't want it anymore. Go." I chuckled lightly. The sound was exceptionally chilling amidst the pouring rain outside. "Auntie, things aren't over yet. The debt your daughter owes me goes far beyond this." Hearing my words, Lu Ruyan trembled even more violently, like a fallen leaf in a cold wind. Jolan's face looked even worse. "Zhu Zhao, you, what more do you want?" "Ruyan, she's already like this. You, at the auditorium." She couldn't continue. That immense sense of humiliation welled up in her heart again, turning her face pale and ashen. "The auditorium?" I raised an eyebrow, my tone laced with amusement. That was just the interest. For years of feelings pouring my heart and soul out, only to have her cuckold me so blatantly, and letting that bastard surnamed Chun humiliate me as a lapdog. My voice turned cold. "Auntie, do you think that little bit of interest is enough? Then what do you want?" Lu Ruyan finally screamed, breaking down. She slid down the wall to sit on the floor, clutching her head with both hands, rain mixed with tears rolling madly down her face. "I was wrong. Zhu Zhao, I'll kneel for you. I'll kowtow to you. Please, just let me go. Let my mom go. If you want to beat or kill someone, come at me." She actually started kowtowing to me. Her forehead struck the cold floor tiles, making dull thud sounds, and soon her forehead was bruised and purple. Watching her abject state, lowly as mud, I felt not a ripple of emotion, only cold disgust. I couldn't even be bothered to look at her. My gaze remained locked on Jolan's face. Jolan watched her daughter debase herself like this. A flash of heartache crossed her eyes, but it was outweighed by a numbness and deeper despair. She closed her eyes, seemingly unable to bear watching any longer, as two streams of clear tears slid down again. "Let her go." My voice was very soft, like a whisper between lovers, but every word carried icy hooks. "Sure." Lu Ruyan's kowtowing stopped abruptly. She raised her head, her face a mix of blood, grime, tears, and rain, a spark of humble hope igniting in her eyes. Jolan also snapped her eyes open, looking at me with shock and uncertainty. I leaned forward slightly, getting closer to Jolan, close enough to smell the faint scent of disinfectant and a trace of the fragrance unique to a mature woman on her. My gaze roamed over her well-maintained face, sliding from the damp corners of her eyes to her slightly pale lips, pursed in nervousness, then falling to her heaving, still plump chest beneath her suit. "Auntie," I lowered my voice even further, carrying an undeniable implication as it clearly entered Jolan's ears. "Ruyan cannot repay the debt she owes me, but you can repay it for her." Jolan's pupils contracted instantly. It was as if she had been struck by invisible lightning. Her body stiffened in an instant, and she looked at me in disbelief, her lips trembling. What did you say?" In the corner, Lu Ruyan was also completely stunned, looking blankly at me, then at her mother. I reached out my hand. Without touching Jolan, I used my fingertip to trace the contours of her cheek in the air, extremely slowly, with an implication bordering on violation, finally stopping at her slightly trembling lips. "You?" I looked straight into her panic-stricken eyes, articulating every word clearly as I spat out the devil's bargain. "You will repay it for her." The hospital room fell into a deathly silence. Only the torrential rain outside washed madly over the world, the crashing sound like dense drumbeats pounding on everyone's hearts. Jolan's face instantly flushed from pale to crimson. That was extreme humiliation and rage. Then it faded to a deathly gray. That was despair. Her chest rose and fell violently, her breathing becoming incredibly rapid. Her eyes were filled with the anger of being humiliated and violated, and a trace of bottomless fear. You're crazy. Zhu Zhao, you're shameless. Obscene. Zhoulan's voice shrieked and cracked from extreme anger and shame. She suddenly raised her hand, wanting to slap me, but I was faster. I grabbed her raised wrist. Her wrist was slender, her skin slightly cool, trembling faintly in my palm. Shameless? Obscene. I tugged at the corners of my mouth, revealing a cold and cruel smile, my gaze sweeping over Lu Ruyan, who sat dumbstruck in the corner. Compared to what your daughter did in that hotel, what is this? Auntie, I'm just giving you a chance to atone for your daughter's sins. My fingers, possessing an undeniable strength, slowly tightened, feeling the frantic throbbing of the pulse at her wrist. You don't want to see your daughter completely ruined, do you? My voice was like the whisper of a demon, carrying fatal temptation and a cold threat. Who is Chunwei? He is lying in a hospital right now, his limbs crippled. Do you think his rich and powerful father will let Ruyan off the hook? These words, like a poisoned dagger, stabbed viciously into Zhou Lan's heart. Her body trembled violently, and the anger in her eyes was instantly replaced by immense fear. She certainly knew the power of the Chun family. She had also seen her daughter's disgrace in the video. Chun Wei was crippled. How could the Chun family possibly let this go? What awaited Lu Ruyan was absolutely a retaliation worse than death. As long as you agree. My voice softened, carrying a coaxing seduction. My other hand, extremely slowly and tentatively, caressed Zhou Lan's side, which was heaving violently from fear and shame. Through the thin fabric of her suit, I could feel the stiffness and trembling of her body. As long as you agree to stay by my side, I will protect Ruyan. I will make the Chun family keep their mouths shut forever. The past will be written off. My fingers gently stroked her slender and tense waistline. Zhou Lan's body jerked, as if electrocuted. She bit her lower lip hard, almost drawing blood. Her eyes struggled violently, as if she were suffering in boiling oil. On one side was the catastrophe and endless humiliation her daughter might face. On the other, her dignity and innocence as a mother and a woman. The immense pain and despair almost tore her apart. Outside the window, rain poured down, accompanied by thunder and lightning. A pale bolt of lightning cut through the dim sky, instantly illuminating three twisted faces in the hospital room. Lu Ruyan slumped in the corner, like a rag doll with its soul sucked out, her eyes hollow, her face left with only endless numbness. She seemed to have finally understood something, or perhaps she didn't want to think about anything anymore. Zhou Lan shut her eyes abruptly, and tears gushed out like broken beads. Her whole body trembled violently, like a leaf about to wither in a gale. Time ticked away, second by second, amidst the suffocating silence and the crashing rain. I don't know how long passed. Zhou Lan's body stopped trembling. She slowly, very slowly, opened her eyes. Those eyes, once gentle and proud, now left with only dead ash and despair, looked straight at me. There was no longer anger or struggle in them, only a resigned, deathly silence, as if she had fallen into an ice cave. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. But her head nodded ever so slightly, an imperceptible movement, yet it carried the weight of 1,000 pounds. It represented total submission. I smiled, a smile that was truly from the heart, cold and satisfied, slowly bloomed on my lips. The force on her wrist loosened, but the hand on her waist slid down more firmly, with an unquestionable possessiveness, steadily and forcefully embracing Zhou Lan's slender and soft waist. Skin touched. Through the thin clothing, I could feel the coldness of her body and her momentary stiffness. Very good. I leaned close to her ear and whispered in a voice only the two of us could hear, declaring like a victor, "From today on, you are mine." Outside, the rainstorm continued to wash over the earth crazily, as if to wash away all filth and sin. In the corner, Lu Ruyan watched her mother being pulled in my arms. watched her mother's lifeless profile like a puppet, and her eyes went completely empty. She was like a shell drained of all strength, collapsing softly, her face pressed against the cold, dirty floor tiles, staring dully at the white curtain of rain outside the window. Embracing Jolan's stiff body, feeling the soft touch of a mature woman's waist under my palm. A supreme pleasure mixed with successful revenge, power control, and forbidden thrills surged through my body like an electric current. Lu Ruyan's breakdown, Chun Wei's wailing, Jolan's submission. This flower of hell, watered by betrayal, had finally bloomed in my hands so eerily and brilliantly. The rain fell all night. By dawn, it finally stopped. The sky looked as if it had been washed, presenting a false, morbid clarity. The air was filled with the smell of earth and a freshness of surviving a disaster. That small observation room in the hospital became my temporary stronghold. Lu Ruyan lay slumped in the corner like a dead dog, silent and still. Only her occasionally heaving chest proved she was still alive. I forcibly brought Jolan to the adjacent companion bed. She spent a sleepless night just staring at the ceiling with those hollow eyes, like a piece of exquisite porcelain that had lost its soul. I leaned against the window, the exhaustion of a sleepless night suppressed by a strange sense of euphoria. The phone vibrated in my palm. The name Li Wei pulsed on the screen. I answered. Hello. My voice carried a hint of lazy huskiness. Brother Zhao. Li Wei's voice betrayed an uncontrollable excitement and an eagerness to claim credit. Big news. Chun Wei, that dumbass, is done for. Seriously done for. Wrists, elbows, knees shattered. The doctor said even if they set the bones, he's basically a cripple. He has internal bleeding too. He's still lying in the ICU. TSK. That's truly fucking brutal. She paused, lowered her voice, and added with a hint of gossipy probing. Also, Chun Wei's dad, Chun Dafu, fainted from anger right after getting the news last night. Heard his high blood pressure spiked, and he's in the hospital too. The Chun family is a complete mess right now. They don't have time to care about that crap with Lu Ruyan. Brother Zhao, you did it, right? You're a badass. Listening, the corner of my mouth hooked up into a cold arc. As expected, the feeling of the wrench smashing down, the sound of cracking bones, and Chun Wei's screams that sounded like heavenly music, recalling them now still brought waves of pleasure. Amen. I responded indifferently, a tacit admission. Then, Lu Ruyan and her mom. How do you plan to deal with them? Li Wei asked cautiously. My gaze swept over Jolan, who sat like a puppet on the bed, and Lu Ruyan, who lay like a pile of sludge in the corner. Them. I chuckled softly, my tone carrying a casual sense of total control. I have my own arrangements. Keep your mouth shut. Understood. Understood. Don't worry, Brother Zhao. Li Wei immediately promised. Then, if there's nothing else, I'll hang up. Wait, I stopped her. Do me a favor. Find a quiet place with a nice environment near the school to rent. 2 bedrooms and a living room will do. Money isn't an issue. Get it done today. Give the keys directly to me. Huh? Rent an apartment? Okay. No problem. Leave it to me. Although Li Wei was puzzled, she immediately agreed. After hanging up, the hospital room fell back into a dead silence. Only the occasional bird chirp from outside the window seemed exceptionally piercing. I walked to Jolan's bedside. She maintained that same posture, her eyes hollow. Overnight, she seemed much more haggard, with heavy dark circles under her eyes. But that mature charm, against a backdrop of despair, revealed a fragile beauty that invited destruction. Auntie. I leaned down, reached out, and with the pads of my fingers carrying a deliberately inflicted warmth, gently stroked her cold, smooth cheek. It's time to be discharged. Let's go home. Jolan's body trembled violently. Her hollow eyes finally found a point of focus, filled with bottomless fear and humiliation. Subconsciously, she tried to dodge my touch. I gripped her chin. The force wasn't heavy, but it carried a dominance that brooked no refusal, forcing her to look up at me. Home. Her voice was hoarse and dry, carrying a hint of mockery. Our home. I corrected her, my gaze roaming over her face with scrutiny and a secret possessiveness. Starting today, you and I live together. As for your daughter, my gaze glanced toward the corner. You have paid off the debt she owes. She is free. Free. A whisper, like a delirious dream, came from the corner. Lu Rian had looked up at some point. Her face was a mess of mixed blood and tears, filthy beyond compare, but her eyes were frighteningly bright, like a dying beast seeing a slim ray of hope. Are you serious? You're letting me go? I didn't answer her, my gaze still locked on Jolan. Her eyes struggled violently, her lips trembling. Her daughter's freedom was the only straw she could clutch right now. Finally, she closed her eyes as if accepting her fate. Her long eyelashes trembled violently like the wings of a dying butterfly. When she opened them again, only a stagnant calmness remained, along with an exhaustion that seeped into her bones. She nodded ever so slightly. Okay. She spat out the word, as if using up all her strength. I smiled with satisfaction. Releasing her chin, my hand slid down naturally to wrap around her slender, soft waist again, half supporting and half holding her as I pulled her up from the bed. Her body was as stiff as a block of wood, only barely standing steady with my support. Ruyan. Jolan cast her gaze toward her daughter in the corner, her voice choked with the last traces of a mother's concern and reluctance. Lu Rian struggled to climb up, but because her legs were numb from sitting paralyzed for so long, she fell back down in a wretched heap. She tilted her head back, looking at her mother who was held in the arms of a strange man. Her eyes were extremely complex, containing relief, bewilderment, pain, and a trace of indescribable malice. Mom! Lu Rian's voice was hoarse and broken. Jolan's tears slipped down silently. She opened her mouth, seemingly wanting to say something, but in the end, she simply closed her eyes in pain and buried her face in my shoulder, her body trembling slightly. This gesture seemed like a silent farewell, but even more so like utter submission. I held her tighter, feeling the slight tremors of her body and the softness and fullness unique to a mature woman. An extreme pleasure, a mix of conquest, possession, and successful revenge, swept through my whole body like an electric current. Let's go, Annie. My voice carried a hint of amused huskiness. I put my arm around her, turned, and walked toward the ward door without a shred of lingering attachment. From behind came Lu Rian's suppressed whimpering, sounding like a wounded little beast. Walking out of the ward, out of the hospital, the slightly cool morning air rushed into my lungs. The sunlight was a bit blinding. Jolan shrank back subconsciously, leaning closer into my embrace. This unconscious gesture of dependence deepened the curve of my lips. Li Wei was very efficient. Before noon, she sent the address and the smart lock password. It was a mid-range residential compound with a quiet environment. Opening the door to the newly rented apartment, I found it clean and tidy. Sunlight spilled in through the floor-to-ceiling windows, feeling warm. I led Jolan to the master bedroom. From now on, you will live in this room. My tone carried the casual air of a master. Jolan stood in the center of the room, looking at the unfamiliar surroundings. Her eyes remained empty and numb, like a soulless marionette. Immense humiliation and despair enveloped her. I closed the door and locked it. The soft click was exceptionally clear in the quiet room. Jolan's body suddenly stiffened, and she turned around to look at me in terror. I walked toward her step by step. The sunlight outlined her mature and graceful curves. Even the hospital gown-like clothes couldn't hide her charm. The traces of despair etched on her face only added a heartbreaking, fragile beauty. Auntie, I stopped in front of her, reached out, and brushed away a stray strand of hair from her cheek with my fingertips. The movement carried a cruelty that bordered on tenderness. This must be paid slowly. My fingers slid slowly down her smooth cheek, over her slender and fragile neck, and finally rested on the first button of her collar. Jolan's body trembled violently. She closed her eyes, and tears surged out silently. She didn't resist, nor did she scream. She just bit her lower lip hard, enduring this crushing humiliation. Seeing her submissive appearance, looking like she was ripe for the picking, a fierce flame mixing the desire to conquer and the desire for revenge exploded in my heart. Lu Rian's betrayal, Chun Wei's humiliation, 4 years of dedication turning into a complete joke. All the accumulated darkness, and violence found the perfect outlet in this moment. I suddenly lowered my head and, with undeniable dominance and cathartic violence, ruthlessly captured her pale lips. MMPH. Jolan let out a short, terrified whimper, her body instantly going rigid as iron. This kiss held no warmth at all. It was filled with punishment, plunder, and a declaration of sovereignty. I roughly pried open her teeth, invading her territory, accompanied by the rusty taste of blood. She had bitten her own lip. She endured it passively, her body trembling futilely within my confinement, tears streaming madly from the corners of her closed eyes. I didn't know how much time passed before I finally released her. Jolan seemed drained of all strength. She leaned limply in my arms, gasping for breath. Her lips were red and swollen, her face crisscrossed with tear tracks, and her eyes were unfocused, filled with the humiliation and despair of being thoroughly violated and possessed. I held her, my fingers brushing over her swollen lips. Looking at the broken wasteland in her eyes, what welled up in my heart was not pity, but an unprecedented satisfaction of total control and a dark, twisted sense of satiety. Just then, my phone rang inopportunely. It was Li Wei. I frowned, answered, and put on speaker. "Brother Zhao, bad news." Li Wei's voice held a trace of panic. "Lu Ruyan. Lu Ruyan ran to the bottom of your dorm building. It's pouring rain outside. She's kneeling in the rain, like a crazy person. There's a huge crowd watching. She keeps shouting her name, begging you to let her mom go. This looks really bad." On the other end of the line, the faint sound of crashing rain could be heard, along with a woman's shrill, tearful screaming. It cut through the curtain of rain, coming through intermittently. "Chu Zhao, come out. Let my mom go. Come at me." The apartment was well soundproofed, yet the gut-wrenching cries from the phone still came through clearly. Jolan, leaning against my chest, trembled violently. Her dazed eyes instantly focused, filled with ultimate terror and heartache. She struggled to break free from my arms, wanting to rush to the door. "Ruyan, my Ruyan!" She wailed miserably. My arms tightened abruptly, imprisoning her firmly in my embrace. With my other hand holding the phone, I stared coldly at the sky outside, which had turned gloomy again, and the pouring rain. The corners of my mouth slowly curled into a cold, cruel arc. "Make her kneel." My voice traveled clearly through the phone to Li Wei's ears, and also drilled into Jolan's, carrying a cruel playfulness. "Tell her that her mother is doing just fine." I lowered my head and leaned close to the hollow of Jolan's neck, which was heaving violently with terror. I took a deep breath, the faint fragrance of her body and the saltiness of her tears lingering at the tip of my nose. Then, speaking into the receiver, I declared clearly, word by word. My voice wasn't loud, yet it struck like a clap of thunder. "The taste is much better than hers." On the other end of the line, Li Wei seemed to gasp, then fell silent. In my arms, Jolan's body went rigid. Then, as if every ounce of vitality had been drained from her, she slumped limply. Her eyes turned completely ashen and hopeless, holding nothing but endless emptiness and deathly silence. She ceased struggling, ceased weeping, like a broken rag doll. Through the phone, Lu Ruyan's shrill cries also came to an abrupt halt upon hearing my words. Only the sound of the relentless, pouring rain remained, frantically washing over the world. I hung up. The apartment fell back into a dead silence. Outside, the rain grew heavier, a vast white expanse blurring heaven and earth into chaos. Raindrops smashed densely against the glass, crackling like countless people knocking in despair. Holding this soulless yet still warm, soft, and mature body in my arms, I walked to the massive floor-to-ceiling window. The cold glass reflected our figures. I looked like a victorious conqueror, and she, my most precious trophy. Watching the torrential, seemingly endless rain outside, and looking at the blurry, tiny figure kneeling in the downpour far below like an ant, if it was even visible, an indescribable satisfaction, like reaching the summit, washed over me like a surging tide. Pain? Regret? Emptiness? No, not a trace. There was only an incredibly pure and intense pleasure rising from the deepest depths of hell. Lu Ruyan's wailing in the rain was the elegy for her betrayal. Chun Wei's gasping on his hospital bed was the price for his arrogance. And this docile, mature woman in my arms was the most dazzling, most taboo gem on my crown of revenge. 4 years of devotion exchanged for a bone-chilling betrayal. Then let the most ruthless revenge be the tribute to my dead love. The end of hell is not a void. It is Lu Ruyan's mother, Zholan. This flower of twisted love, watered by hatred and blooming on the ruins of betrayal, gave off an intoxicating, rotten, yet sweet fragrance. I tightened my arms, pressing Zholan's ice-cold body closer to my chest, resting my chin on the crown of her head, which still held a faint scent. Outside, the rain poured down, as if to wash away everything in the world. Inside, I held my trophy, feeling the twisted fulfillment brought by her warm, soft body. The corners of my mouth slowly curled into a cold, satisfied smile. This ending could not be better. The end.